Assalamu alaikum warahmatullahi wabarakatuh. I'm going to say welcome to everyone. My name is Amir Muhammad, Amir Muhammad, Ibn West, Ibn Bella. And I go to the Bellas as farthest I can trace back in my father's side of the family, of the people that was brought here and captured. I'm really humbled to speak to y'all as well as to the audience out there. 1619. Why 1619? What's the point about 1619? Well, 400 years ago, 1619 was the first group of 20 Africans that was brought here. They was brought here somewhat as indentured servants. There's stories about that. So today what I want to do is talk a little bit about what led up to 1619, some of the circumstances what led up to 1619, and then talk about events and things afterwards. Intertwining with, as well as the history of Muslims throughout the world, where that you'll find that the first group, one thing I want to dispel is that Africans did not just come here through the slave trade. They came here before the slave trade. They came here as travelers. There was Mansour Musa's brother Abu Bakr came here, made two journeys, one in 1312 and the last one was in 1322. They're credited with having leaving masjids or rooms of masjids in Panama, Cuba, and that region, that area. They're credited with naming the islands Honolulu as well as Hawaii. Then you had Muslims that came in through what we call the Spanish Inquisition. Some fleeing the Spanish Inquisition, some being enslaved from the Spanish Inquisition. Then you had a wave of Muslims that came through the African diaspora. And we're going to talk a little bit about that. But before I go there, I just want to point out these are some of the articles that they talk about the early arrival of Muslims and reports of early arrival of Muslims coming over into the Americas way before the slave trade. Here are some books that talk about the early arrival of Muslims here. You got Van Servan, They Came Before Columbus, Saga of America, Columbus Was the Last. These are stories that talk about the arrival of West Africans, the people that came from West Africa prior to that. But you see now also, this is a map of Spain. And over here you see Sali, Morocco. Here you find many battles that went on, like the first country. So now America's freedom and independence was Morocco. Morocco, Tunisia, Algiers, Libya, and Muscat, which is Oman today, are the first out of the first 10 international countries who signed peace treaties with the United States. So you hear that story, and you see Muslims that came from that Spanish Inquisition that went on. You find ruins. This is in Puerto Rico. This is the fort of the Moors in Puerto Rico. And in this fort on the wall, there's this Arabic script that's written on you. You see it here. This on the wall that's facing the ocean. This is a restaurant in Old San Juan with the Arabic script written on it. These are just some of the ruins that you'll find about them. Some of the people that came from the Spanish Inquisition period, they were called Moriscos when they was in Spain. When they wound up coming here, they became known as Melungeons. They wound up living in the Appalachian Mountains of Tennessee, Kentucky, and West Virginia. They say that Elvis Presley's mother was a Melungeon. Abraham Lincoln's mother was a Melungeon. These Melungeons still exist today. And the reason why I'm talking about this is that first wave, so we can get an understanding and a platform. Another group of people that you find early in America that came from the Spanish Inquisition is the Moors of Delaware. And they married the Musnagaco Indians, or the Native American Indians. There's this book that was done about them in 1948. This is what this story is talking about, these Moors of Delaware. They wound up living in Dover, Delaware, and in Bridgeton, New Jersey. Now we want to move into a little bit into the story of what we're coming here to talk about, that is West African and Muslims in the slave trade. A lot of times people give us a perception, man, that Africa had no civilization, no culture. You know, but you had great Islamic empires. You had Timbuktu, you had the Songhai. There's so many institutions of learning all throughout West Africa. Here, this is the map to show you the growth of Islam in Africa. North Africa, 7th century. 8th century, all up in Spain until 1492. 11th century, 12th century. Slave trade didn't happen until the 1400s. But Islam had penetrated way into West Africa over 700 years. One of the empires that existed prior to it was the Mali Empire. Here you have what the Mali Empire looked like, which covered many countries all throughout the of West Africa, Senegal, Gambia, Guinea, Mali. These are some of the areas that the people were brought here from. Here is a map that shows you the water current, just like we have hurricanes and tornadoes and everything coming up out of West Africa. Well, this is the air route, the water route. And you see that it takes them, just the flow that it goes through. That's why you find stories of Muslims all up in here, early Spaniards, Europeans, coming in South America, the Caribbean, all up in this area, because the water current brought them in that way in that region. Here, this begins with some of the stories that happened historically in the 1400s with Muslims and the Moors and some of the things that we talked about. This here is Estevanico. He's credited, he's the first known Muslim coming here in the United States. He's credited with discovering Arizona and New Mexico. For this project, I started doing a little bit of research. Here you have, where did the first enslaved Africans come to and from? The first enslaved Africans arrived in Hispaniola in 1501 after Portugal had succeeded in establishing sugar plantations in northern Brazil by 1545. All right, then you got the Portuguese merchants. Now, this is why I talked about Spain and the Spanish Inquisition, because we lost to Spain, and this is why you find the Portuguese becoming the first group of people that started enslaving the West Africans and these Muslims coming over here. And they brought them up into what you see in the Brazil area. When did the Africans first come to England? Now we're talking about in England, we're talking the 16th century, Africans arrived in London with Catherine Aragon, traveled to London, and brought a group of her African attendants with her. Okay? And then they had some trumpeters. Under Henry VII, came to London. From Sir William, they came to London. But the first recorded one was in 1593, up in London. When did slavery begin in England? Britain was a dominant empire at the time from 1640 to 1807. British slave trade was demolished, but they kept it going on for a few years after that.
And is this like assuming that these Africans were Muslims? Or,
A lot percentage. There's anywhere from 15 to 30% that was caught was Muslims. Especially you have more Muslims in the beginning. There's a map that I'll show that there was more Muslims in the beginning. Later on, when it got deeper down in Africa, Angola and all that, majority of them were not Muslims. More up in Mauritania, Senegal, Gambia, and that region where they brought the Muslims in. And then they brought them in for different reasons and different timelines and in different areas. Like in the Mandingos, like your blacksmith and the horse people, they brought them up in the early 1700s. You had in the 1600s, you had more people that clearing out the land, cut down trees, turpentine, things like that, clearing the land. You had a different type of group of people. I'll come back to that when I talk a little bit about the Harriet Tubman. Her family was part of that. When did the first Africans come enslaved into America? 1619. That's what we celebrate. And they came into Virginia, in Jamestown. And this talks about that, and that's what it was really. They was captured. This things got captured, and that's how they wanted to come in here. But they came not as enslaved people in chains, but they came as indentured servants, or this first group. And these are some of the areas, the Carolinas, the Virginia, the Chesapeake area. Chesapeake area is Nat Turner and all those people. Desmond Swan, Usman, who was the Muslim leader in the Desmond Swan. New England, New York, New Jersey, the Midwest, Mississippi, Louisiana, Florida, and Georgia. And I'll talk a little bit about each one of those states and counties in a few minutes that you find Muslims in those areas. But I want to go at least 100 years, a little bit even before that, okay? Because it really started with King Charles in Spain in 1518. Okay, he granted license to import people that they were enslaved. This is only, remember now, we lost Spain 26 years later, after we lost Spain 1492. Then also in 1518, the first shitload of enslaved Africans came directly into the West Indies, really into the Dominican Republic. Prior to this, Africans were just brought first to Europe. And then 1520s, enslaved Africans are used in labors in Puerto Rico. I showed y'all the map and the fort in Puerto Rico. You find the Arabic in it, as well as Cuba and in Mexico. In 1526, the Spaniards, Africans came over here with the Spaniards. And then that was part of Georgia. Then they wound up going more inland. Then in 1527 to 1539, that first Muslim I talked, in some reports you hear, they call him Mustafa. Some reports they call him Estebanico. Some say Esteban. Some was call him say Mustafa. And in African American history books they call him Negro Stephen or Little Stephen. He's credited with discovering Arizona and New Mexico. Came with the Spaniards, got shipwrecked, wound up going overland. And then on the bottom is one of the pictures of Morisco being married and being called at that time a Melungeon. In 1540, you have Hernando de Sosa expedition going out in Mississippi. You have in 1550 slaves being directly arriving into Brazil. You know, if you look at and we're about 1835, you had that Brazilian Muslim revolt going on into the area. In Brazil, you had many strong Muslim communities and African American Muslim communities. In 1562, the first European that stimulated the other Europeans into getting into slave trade was John Hawkins. He brought a group over in 1562. In 1565, Africans came over with the Spaniards and worked as farmers in what we call the first town in the United States, St. Augustine in Florida. 1598, Isabella, who was a free mulatto. Mulatto was, a light-skinned woman, had either heritage, Native American, African, or white. It was a mulatto that was light. 1613, Jose Rodriguez, I'm going to mess up so many names. He was a free seller with the Dutch. He wound up coming living in the Manhattan. So these are some of the stories before 1619. 1619 is where they brought the Africans into Virginia. And this is what Virginia's acknowledging and respecting. There was also a report of another Muslim up New York, Nazarene. He was the Egyptian. Fell in love with a Native American woman. I talked earlier about the Melungeons in South Carolina. 1586, Sir Raleigh. There was a group of Muslims that was captured. Came with Sir Raleigh. They became known as Lumbee Indians and the Lazarus tribe in North Carolina. This is an early group that still exists today. And the other book was talking about the people, the Moors of the period. We saw earlier, it talked about the Carolinas. The first group of people Europeans to come into the Carolinas was Europeans out from Barbados. And they brought their own Africans from Barbados. When it was in Barbados, these are some of the chains that they used on people. And you can see in one of the stories that one of the Muslims that was enslaved, Omar ibn Saeed, and one of his writings he used to talk about in Surah Yasin, where they put the bar up in front, you can't see in front of you, and the bar can't see in back of you. You see some of those bars that they used for the people that were what they considered rebellious in those days. We found those chains up in there. And this is what they talk about in August. It's this month. Some will say August the 24th, some say August the 25th. Over 40 years ago was the first arrival. So I'm honored that we're honoring and recognizing those ancestors that came before us and the presence and the struggle to get us where we are today. And that we do need to take this time to take an inner look at the progress that we need to make as human beings. But there's many challenges that we're faced with today, but we can reflect upon how we got here. You know, I like to say that you read in the Quran, there's two stories. One about Joseph, how he got into Pharaoh's house through slavery, being sold, and jealousy and resentment and things like that, and the trial and tribulation and go that route. Another one, you see the story about Musa, and his mother being inspired to send him out as immigrant. You know, go into Pharaoh's house, made a little boat, made a manger, and then sent them away. You know, and he wound up in Pharaoh's house. So we come in different paths and journeys, but come into the same place and circumstances. So this is something I left that there for a minute so y'all can read the story a little bit. Because I think it's an important story. Some places do a better job in telling the African American historical sites and presence, like Maryland and our places. But Virginia, at least they're acknowledging their history, and hopefully they'll learn to tell the story a lot better. Because y'all, even though we're in the area now, there's many parts in Virginia that were early African American communities that has gone by, and their stories have not been told. So this is the story of how these Africans came into. Once again, you see with the Portuguese that came. Now, going to the Muslim component of it, they brought in some Moors, your Syrians, your Wallace, your Mandingos, your Tangerines, your Houses, and your Fulanis, some of the Muslim tribes that you see that they brought in. You see them in different places all throughout the United States, all throughout the Americas. The only thing with this map, it doesn't show this early period. The Portuguese started all up here and came down. This is where you had the heavy Muslim population, all right here. When they started penetrating down here, Islam was not here. So anybody that they brought here, they were not Muslim. Okay, here you had mixture going in. Okay, this is the other trade route. Now here it shows you some going up. Now this is only talking about the West African slave trade. This is not talking about the East African or the Arab slave trade. This is talking about strictly the Atlantic slave trade. This is part of that map of Mali that I showed earlier. This is where you see all these countries. Like I have done a DNA. They say part of me come out of Benin. One of my next trips I'm going to take, I'm going back to the census records in Georgia. I swore that I saw in that census record that one of them said that my great-great-grandparent, she came from Dahomey. So there's some of that information I want to look at. Now, a lot of y'all saw that movie or heard about the movie Black Panther. Okay, but some of the names you heard in that movie, Djalo, Fulani. There's a lot of Muslim tribes, Muslim names that they use. The first Hafiz in the United States, his name was Job Ibn Djalo, arrived in Annapolis, Maryland, came in 1730. And he was only enslaved for 3 years before he got his freedom. And this is an article talking about Djalo. Now this Djalo, this is early French. Now they do DJ. But then you got the other Djalo, the Jalon, Jalow. They are all the same. But because the Europeans came in and divided up the area, that French dominated, English, German, what was dominated, they spell it different, but it's all the same thing. This here is the Fulani. When they talk about Fulanis, this is an article, a precursor to GQ magazine. They talk about do not bring no Fulanis in. You can't bring them. This is the precursor. This is done in 1750. This was a book that was done in 1734, talking about Job Ibn Djalo and his whole lifestyle. Now, there's three types of Muslim personalities that you see appear in American history. Either scholars, entrepreneurs, or leaders. Now, just talking about Job being a Hafiz, so he goes towards a scholar. This year in American history, his name is Vincent Smith. He was in Connecticut, in Norwich area of Connecticut. He came here at the age of 8, enslaved. He told them his name was Abu Bakr, or Bakir Toro, pardon me. He come from the Dubaka River area, which is in Guinea today. He told them Dubaka River still exists today. So now we know where he come from. And really, in West Africans, they take the aleph off, so it's really Abu Bakr, a famous Abu Bakr in the area. They call it Dubaka River. He told him his name was Bakir Toro. Butchers Futujawa, Fututoro was those regions, those areas. But he said they changed his name to Venture, that this was this guy's investment. So he's going to make a venture, capital venture off of it. So he came here at the age of 8. By the time he died, he owned over 100 acres of land, brought his wife freedom, and 2 of his sons freedom. So you see this entrepreneurship within. This here is in 1753, the first political activities that were ever done about Muslims. The law of the land stated in 1685, if you was a Moor or a Turk, and your country got a relationship with the King of England, you got the right to be free. You can't own slaves, but you got the right to be free. So there was these 2 Muslims that came from Asali, Morocco. Remember earlier I showed you this about Asali, Morocco. Well, that was named after a famous Muslim who was a European that was a pirate that converted to Islam. Became very famous. They said they came from, got fought in the battle and lost. They agreed to work over here for 7 years as indentured servants, but they were sold to another man, LaRouche, and he worked for another 8 years. So after being enslaved for 15 years, they petitioned the government in South Carolina for their freedom. They won, and they wrote it down all in Arabic, and it was a Jewish woman that did the translation. It became known as the Moor Sun-Dry Act. And you see the name of Adel Connor and Mahmoud Muhammad. And it's from the Arabic. And there was a Jewish woman who was part of the Spanish Inquisition as well that was in that area. These are runaway slave advertising. This is one in North Carolina talking about a Mustafa and him running away. This one is talking about a Kawami, one named Sambo, another one Sambo from the Moorish country. And you know they're looking at as being Moors and Muslims. This one is looking for Muhammad. Hard favorite, he had pimples and pivot marks on his face. This is in 1774, and this was in Georgia. This is the first Arabic letters written found in the United States in 1768. Is the Al-Fatiha and 4 of the last surahs of the Holy Quran, written by this brother Chano in South Carolina. Today, it is housed at the Philadelphia Historical Society. This is its actual photograph of it. Many of us know about the story of Kunta Kinte. Well, Kunta Kinte was a Muslim. If you go back and read the first 26 chapters of the book, it talks about his Islamic life. Talking about his father's name was Umar. Mother's name was Benton. This is the actor Chicken George dressed in an Islamic robe. You see him with a corn pipe, taking a picture. Now, in history, they thought that he was in his pajamas. What man would be in his pajamas and taking a picture with his corn pipe? This is Islamic tradition. This is a historical marker honoring the rival Kunta Kinte into Annapolis, Maryland. Another reason why I'm honored to be able to share this story in Virginia over the 400 years, it also is personal to me. This here is a record. This guy, Charles Keenan, freed these people in Halifax, Virginia in 1785. This is 85 years before, 85 years or 80 years before we got our freedom. One of these people are my ancestors. I'm not sure if it's Moses or Abraham. Because what in there, this here, when they got their freedom, they would have to go to court every so often to identify themselves. This is Moses Freeman. He was a free man of color. He came into his office, talking about he came into his office, where he talked about he was emancipated or freed by Charles Keenan on the 9th day, February 1785. Then he talked about he had a scar on his cheek So that's an African marking. So he was given his freedom. There was another one named Ibrahim that was given his freedom. Here, while I was still looking in the court record, hopefully y'all can see this. It say Thomas. Y'all see what this say? Truth. Down I wonder about Sojourner Truth. This was in 1817. He was a free man. That's an Islamic name. You know. Now this is my ancestor. His name is Isaac Freeman. And now with him, he's dark skinned, 5 feet 5 inches, got a knot on his hand. But they identify him as being born free. Moses was the only one that was, you know, him and Abraham was the only one that was given their freedom from Child's Kingdom. So he was born free. So, but I haven't been able to find the records to connect them to that first one. But so I feel honored that my family, my ancestors, my descendants, at least from 1785, been free people, you know, for generations now. And they had Muslims around them. Now we found stories of Muslims in the American Revolutionary War. There's at least 6 that I found with Islamic names. Yusuf ibn Ali became known as Joseph bin Heli. Yusuf is Joseph, Ben is Ibn, Heli is Ali. This family still lives there today. In Sumter, South Carolina, he fought with General Sumter. There's a Babbitt Muhammad that comes up out of Virginia that's registered in the Revolutionary War. Joseph Saba, Francis Saba, and 2 listed American histories as African American Revolutionary War heroes. Peter Saline and Saline Poor. These are postage stamps that they put up on it. In American history, you'll hear them use the word Salem. If you look in the dictionary, that word Salem is the Arabic root word Saline. I'm going to divert just for a second, and that is talk about. I mentioned earlier about Morocco being the first country to acknowledge American freedom and independence. This here is a letter from the Sultan of Morocco to President George Washington. This is a letter from George Washington back to the Sultan of Morocco, asking to help establish those peace treaties or relationships so they can have free waterway rights. This here is the ratification of the peace treaty. I'm not sure if you can see it, but this is John Adams, who became president, Thomas Jefferson, who became president. This is in 1787. They were U.S. diplomats to the Muslim world. This is why you find in the American Constitution and the framing of America inclusiveness. They both had a Quran. This is a copy of the page from Thomas Jefferson Quran. This here is a page from John Adams Quran, which is in Massachusetts Library. Here's John Adams Library. Here's one of the articles of the government. Said, as the government of the United States of America is not in any way said founded on the Christian religion, as it has in itself no character of enmity against the laws, religion, or the tranquility of Muslim men. I was with Muhammad. You know, it fought real hard to be inclusive. And this is where you see them talking about the human soul, the human being. You know, America was not built upon. You hear today politics say it's built upon Judeo-Christian values, but I knew I was born as a Christian. Do not kill, do not steal, do not lie, do not cheat. These are Christian values. They did all these things. This is not Christian values. They built America upon the freedom of religion. The freedom to practice or the freedom not to practice. And if you look at America, this is what it was built upon. Now, at the turn of the century, in the 1800s, started finding Muslim personalities appearing, either as leaders and entrepreneurs, another entrepreneur. Yar Mahmoud, this is close to us, in Georgetown. He had owned property in Georgetown. He had a hauling business in Georgetown. This painting hangs up in the Philadelphia Historical Society. This painting was once in the Poetry Gallery, but now it went back to the Public Library in Washington, D.C. Yara had owned property. He's known as had a hauling business. Matter of fact, this young man in front of us, he does the play of Yara. He acts out the life of Yara Mahmoud. This is his census records. In the 1800s, this Yara. 1810 census, his name became Yara, Negro Yara. 1820, this is 1800, this Yara. 1810, then 1820 came Yara Mahmoud. Yes.
Yarrow's picture also hangs in the library of Georgetown University.
But that's the same one. They just moved it around. Its primary home is at the D.C. Public Library, the Peabody Room.
Right, Peabody.
In Georgetown. But it was a fire. Matter of fact, there was a fire at that museum. And the curator man, or the librarian, he purposely, consciously went and saved that picture and to protect that. Then, come a little bit closer, in 1812, we found out that the first Muslim communities that existed in the United States. We know about this because the story states that in the War of 1812, Bilal told the slave master, I got 80 men to help defend this island. I can't count on the Christian slaves that you own. So he identified 80 of them being Muslim. He also left this Risala, this book, instructing them how to pray, how to fast, best time to dhikr, and he was spiritually conscious because he talked about before Fajr and Asr or Maghrib. He talked about holistic living. There's stories about them, Toni Morrison, Tar Baby, Song of Solomon, some of those early works, they talked about these people. They called them the Gullah people, those Gullah people, those people that believe in Allah. These are the Senegal-Gambian people. They brought them in to do rice, indigo. Now this time has came down. They brought them down to do rice and indigo. And Bilal and them was isolated and very well respected and liked. These Gullah people was in Florida, Georgia, South Carolina, and North Carolina. At the time of the one finger. Well, in America, when I found out that we didn't have one Bilal as a leader, but we had two Bilals. And in between the two Bilals, I found this tombstone with the one finger on it. And it was this guy named Sambo. All in American history, I used to hear the market, that's Sambo, where you been? But now I come down into this Georgia with the Gullah people, I find a tombstone with this one guy named Sambo. I believe one guy. We found these tombstones from Florida all the way up to Canada, out west to Kansas. And it wasn't just these African American Muslims doing it. We found Eastern European Muslims doing it as well. I will talk about that in a few minutes. But these are a few pages from the actual book. This book a couple of years ago was on display at the Anacostia in Washington, D.C. The leader of that group is Salih Bilali. Now, each one of these stories are stories within them. He was also plantation manager, over 40 to 50 people. Because the Islamic consciousness, the manners, the trust that people had in them, there was models. Now, part of his group of people joined the War of 1812, went with the British, and wound up going to Nova Scotia. And if you ever read the story about the Book of the Negroes, how they got with the British and how they enticed them, some of his groups went there. They maintained this name Bilali at least up to the 1940s. This is his great-great-grandson. Even they brought the plantation. Now, the government went and interviewed these 1930s, and they talked about remember their grandparents praying 3 times a day. They said towards the rising at the sunset, midday, sunrise, midday, sunset, and they face the sun, which is the east, and they're talking about Bilali and remember them praying. They're speaking broken English, but they're writing down what they can remember out of it. And speed it up a little bit more. Here they're talking about some of the Gullah people. They're talking about the Gullah people. They're talking about the prayer beads and how they wear their scarves. It's a tradition that people just took assumption of. But one of the things America did to get them out of wearing that scarf, if you ever saw that Aunt Jemima pancake, Aunt Jemima used to make markers, that rag on that. A lot of indigenous people, Americans say, I'm not going to become a Muslim, I ain't going to put that rag on. So subliminally is what they used to get us out of that, wearing this scarf. There's a movie called Daughters of the Dust that talk about the Bilali people, the Gullah people. They showed you how they enticed them to get them out of, that's the old way. You come with the new way, come with the fad, entice them to get out of that tradition. But many of them maintained that tradition for years. These are some of the first houses that they built. You ever watch that movie Glory? This is the first African American hospital built. This is on the Gullah Islands, out of sand, seashells, and limestone. Man, This Bilal, 1812. Now, this is some of the descendants of him. Being enslaved, still in plantation, but 20, 30 years later. You see, and this is in 1845 and 57. You see this Barkish is probably Bakir. You see a Fatima. This Billy's probably Bilal, a Fatima, a Muhammad, a Benna, a Bilali, a Ishmael. You saw Ibrahim. You see so many different names. That was one Muhammad. Now you got another Fatima, another Benna, Ameta, and Tawa. Ameta, you find that the woman that did the book of Negroes, they called her that. They called Harriet Tubman was born with that name. And that's really Amina in West African language, in broken English language is how they spelled it out. 1827. And here's another Muhammad. And this is the age, and let me make sure I get it right. I'm not sure what the one is, but this is the age, and then the value. Then you got this family, another Fatima, Suleiman, a killer. In fact, Bilali, Yaro Mahmoud's wife's name was a killer. Some of the early churches. You know, I interviewed some of these Bilali people, and they said even in their church today, the male and female sit separate, and they pray towards the east, and they bury the people towards the east. And some of the churches were prayer house, prayer. They made prayer, not that the church is a house of prayer. You know, they don't go make salat. Here, this is another church. This is a church in Savannah, Georgia, the first African Baptist church. There's reports that they say that a lot of southern churches, they had 2 doors for the male and female. Inside this church, on the second floor of all of its pews, got this Arabic script written on it. And even on the floors, you got African designs. This is part of the Underground Railroad. Yeah. This is coming a little bit further down. This is still the Gullah people. This is down there in Florida. This is another woman out of Senegal. These are some early photographs, you know, of the colored people. You see them still wearing their wraps and layers of clothes. Here's another set of women. You know, this is out of the Florida area. Now this one here, I found this is the first one. You know, the women, you know, now they wear scarves. You know, they might be questionable. But right here, this little boy got a kufi on. And you can see his African garb. This is in the 1800s. That ain't no cup, you know, with them little pots on his head. That's clearly a kufi. These are some of your Gullah people in that Florida area. And they built some of the same houses. Sand seashells and limestone. No one rock came and stormed to build up houses that were standing. So these are some of the rooms that are still down. Here, this is still in the Florida. Now you got another group of people. The Melungeons, the Seminole Indians, and the Africans in Florida, and Pensacola area. These are the Seminole Indians. They had a leader named Ibrahim, was a Muslim, a leader out that group. And for generations, they maintained their Islamic garbs and some of their traditions. You're still seeing them with the kufis on, long garb, and living in the bush. This is another photograph that came out of the African collection. This is one of the oldest ones that was still living, out of what they call the Seminole Indian. She was more the name Amina. They say that she took on the name Harriet, that was her mother's name. Now, my ancestor that was in America came to the slave trade during that time, her name was Hagar. Now, just a few weeks ago, another brother introduced me to the West African tradition of Harriet. You know, you talk about the Ha, the Ra, and Ta. And the symbol is that really was, came up with the mean freedom. You know, so I'm not sure in this film, but if you look at Harriet Tubman's life, she's always wearing a scarf. If you look at her words, she's a believer. She said that she waited for God to inspire her or to lead her into freeing the people and what to do. When you go inside the museum, they talk about how they would fast every Friday. I know today we'll say, stop Allah, not supposed to only fast on Friday, but they were enslaved and subjected. Friday's a special day, Jumu'ah day. So they took advantage of it, and that's what they would do. That's what she would do. And you see her in the old nation Islam days, she make du'as like that, pray like that. Another unique thing about that group of people, this is still in that 1600 period. Virginia, Jamestown was in Eastern Shore, Virginia. Eastern Shore, Virginia, and St. Mary. Now, St. Mary was heavily Catholic. Heavily Catholic was part of that Spanish Inquisition oppression. So they really suppressed Islam. On the Eastern Shore, you had Quakers and Methodists. And a lot of the first African Americans, you see the Islamic tradition blended in America with the churches and Islam. Where that, and the reports, they say they thought these places was gargoyles. Gothic. Now, because I could be wrong, you know. I thought Gothic had gargoyles and had some minaret, Islamic arch, and all these windows. There's no major crosses on this. You see the arches. You know, they called it down. It was unique to them. And so this is where some of the Baptist churches started coming out with that. Here, this is one church. They changed the windows, new windows. But right here in the minaret, they still got Islamic architect. You see that design? All they did was put a piece they made with, and put a piece up in the window. So the ladies maintain. They probably don't know what they've been doing. But these are the little hints that you see all throughout the United States. Here, this is a obituary that I'm going to speed up my method. Alright? So, but I will speed up a little bit. No, that's my brother up here. This is an obituary of a woman named Lizzie Gray. Not a famous Muslim personality. You've seen the PBS movie, The Principal Slave, Abdul Rahman. You know, all these stories. You know, you got the intersection, you know, we know the Quran, the story about Musa and the Jewish community traveling out in search for 40 years. This guy was enslaved for 40 years. This guy, there's many things that we can use to connect. This guy here took care of a white European doctor, him and his father, when he was a little kid. The doctor got better and went on about his way. Then what happened is 40 years, he's selling his downtown with his homeboy, his friend Sambo. And this guy that they took care of, they passed him by. They recognized each other. That was the providence of Allah. And after 40 years of being enslaved, running away, then going in the plantation system, becoming plantation manager, he got his freedom. And for me, you know, they taught us that we couldn't read and write. But this guy wrote. He said, my name is Abdul Rahman, son of Ibrahim. I was born in the city of Wib, Timbuktu. I lived there till I was 5 years old, then I moved to the capital, Timbuktu. He's telling me he's coming from Timbuktu. You know, and he go, right, and this letter was done, this one reason why we celebrate October 1828 as a free man. And this letter is housed at Philadelphia Historical Society. This one is in Yale, University of Yale. Now, in many, the Lord's Prayer. Our Father, our in heaven, hallowed be thy name. It is the Lord's Prayer, the whole world. Al-Fatiha. And give a salutation to the Prophet, and then, you know, what his ayah comes. If we don't tell our story, somebody else will. One of the stories that I saw is about the Tombstones. You know, and I looked at American history, and the researchers, they said they thought that point meant pointing up to heaven, going to heaven. One God. You know, for me, and this the guy in between Bilal. And just find them all going all back and forth. You know, and then what really validated it for me was that I found in a town called Mecca, Indiana, tombstones written in Arabic and tombstones with the one finger on it. But I think it's important so that we understand. These are census records in 1850. This guy is in Ohio. His name is Henry Allah. Coming from Ireland. Many they received so good, but he's coming from Ireland. I found 70 census of people coming from Ireland. So I run to Sheikh Google. Muslims in Ireland. He said 1959. I said, oh, no. You know, I seen this. Now do Muslim Moors or pirates, Muslim pirates, Moors. They conquered southern parts of Ireland. Many of them converted. So now I wonder about this old dude, old tools, and all these names. All these names that moved from Islam to, you know, another tradition. We've seen in America. And matter of fact, even with the guys that converted to Christianity, and they put these animals up just to keep y'all in, like they used to put pigs and give us pigs and stuff. Hey, we put these animals up, you know. But you look at what they say got to come out of, look like masjids. This is what the animals put on. This is another one. A Muhammad from Arabia. He living in California. This is 1850. We've been part of American fabric, all aspects of it.
We like to have time for question answer
also. Okay.
And in between some coffee and donuts also.
Okay. All right. Good enough. You too kind, man. My brother. Be the clock, man.
We have 2 minutes.
All right. About the 1850s. He's one of the most prolific writers. There's autobiography, which a Muslim had owned, but when he passed, he sold the Library of Congress brought it from him. So now it's on display in the Library of Congress. And he talks about where he was educated, how he was educated, who was his teacher, and his travels. So these are all American stories. These are all Muslim American narratives that we can tell. This is another one I got from our friend Dr. Suleiman Yang. He used to always say there was this Muhammad in Pittsburgh. So me and my friend, we went up in there and we found this tombstone, Jeremiah Muhammad. This is his wife. This is his census record. They were free people in 1850. There was free African American black people with the name Muhammad. Now they spelled the name Muhammad M-E-T-T at the end. Sometimes it was M-I-T-T. I'm leaving off all the beginning, but at the end. But I found out, and what helped me out in World War I, there was 550 people had the last name Muhammad, spelled 41 different ways. M-O-M-U-M-A, one H-A-H-O, one M, two M's, E-D-I-D, 41 ways. You know, so I want to be balanced that, you know, we can't prejudge. Albanian Mohammedans, they call him, but his name was Balowski. That's Bilal. But because they come from that region, it's Balowski. So these are some of the things we have. I'm going to go real brief. These are some Civil War heroes. Muhammad ibn Saeed and Max Hassan. Max Hassan came directly from Africa, both of them, as free people. This here, war. In Tuscaloosa, Alabama, when they went down some books, they said, no, you can say one book. And that one book they ran and said is still on display today. This is as American apple pie. These are some of the tombstones that we found. Just some of the samples. The Tahiti, one finger everywhere. Connecticut, Mississippi. This one says the name Usman, O-S-M-A-N. Rockman, R-O-C-K-M-A-N. Rockman, come on, R-A-H-M-A-N-A-N. But that was how they spelled it in back those days. Here's another one. This is the famous personality. His name is Hajj Ali. In America, Muslim was not cowboys. You know, it was camel boys. It was to go out west. They made a couple journeys. One of those camel herders was this Hajj Ali. When he died, they nicknamed him Hajj Ali, and they put this pyramid on top of it. There's an old cowboy picture. They got 3 actors acting like they're Muslim. These are some of the Arabic tombstones that we found. This that one guy talking about Balowski, Qasim Balowski, Albania, 1902. That's 117 years. So I'm gonna be I'm gonna close, but I think it's important at least to talk a couple more times. There's this town called Mecca, Indiana, that exists. About 35 miles from there's a Arabian cemetery where we found tombstones that wasn't famous. And the family cemetery called the Hickson family, we found tombstones in Arabic. And we know this is in Arabic, just like West Africans wrote in Arabic, but they used their own dialect. Turkish community people. They used Arabic, but they wrote in their own dialect. It's the Turkish writing, and using their words, because they demolished it in 1922, 23. And she died in 1917. She was the wife of a noble. This here is another town. This is Muhammad, Illinois. And Lincoln spent the night in this town. We found tombstones with the one finger in this town. You see the highway sign, public library, administrative, a grocery store. Now they don't want this name. Some of the places, other places, they call it Middletown, but legally they're known as Muhammad, Illinois. This is the last slide I go through. This one is Muhammad, Texas. Remember I said we was not cowboys, we was camel boys. But this was a guy that grew up in Muhammad, Illinois, was going out Texas. They had a post office from 1857 to 1916, led by August camel herders. So no, we were not cowboys. We was camel boys in America. So I want to stop there. These are just some towns all throughout the United States with Islamic names all throughout. You got this. I think it's on this one. Somebody had to know about Islam. I knew about Islam. Name it men. So these are some of the towns. These are some of the other towns. You got El Qadir. This is named after a famous Muslim Algerian who helped save some Lebanese, and they honor them. There's this town in Iowa named after that. You got you got Ishmael, you got Dahomey, Darfur. These are some African towns. So you see it all throughout. I'm almost all the way up to at least the 19th century. There's more we could share, but because of time, I will be respectful of that. And I'm going to open up for any questions, if there's any questions. Yes, ma'am.
You mentioned the Quran, the only book that was saved during the Civil War. You said it's at what exhibition?
Tuscaloosa, Alabama.